If you admire magnolia flowers as much as I do, then this is the tutorial for you, because today we're going to learn how to draw this beautiful magnolia flower in graphite. So let's go. Hi little bees, and welcome back to our apiary. I'm Dr. B, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you exactly how you will be able to draw this beautiful magnolia flower. So grab any pencils that you have and any paper that you have. I really want you to just have a go with this. It's such a fun project. You don't need very much to get started with this project. This is a step-by-step tutorial that you'll be able to follow at home. Even if you just have printer paper, that's perfectly fine. So step one is to study the reference photo. Now if you can, it would be a good idea if you could take a screenshot of that and send it to your printer. If you haven't got a printer, just take a screenshot or pause it where you can see what the finished product is going to look like. Before you start sketching, you really need to study what your end point is going to be, and that will help you to actually achieve your goal. After you've done that, grab the lightest pencil that you have, in this case it's a 2H pencil, and start drawing a general outline of your magnolia. And if you are watching on a screen where you could turn up the brightness, it'd be a good idea to do that now, because the 2H pencil is actually a really light pencil and it will make it far easier for you to see if you turn up the brightness on your screen now. As you can see, I've swatched out all the different grades of graphite pencil that I have. There's no need to worry about details at this stage, just the general shape. You're not concerned about details at all at this stage. You're only trying to map out where each petal is, where the stem is, where the center of the flower is. Remember to have a very light hand when you're drawing out your magnolia. And just keep going until you've mapped everything out. I'm just going to speed this up a little bit so I can get you guys to see the next stage. So once I've finished with my initial sketch with my lightest pencil, I'm going to now grab my darkest pencil, which is my 8B pencil. With that pencil, I'm just going to go straight in and apply that dark graphite to the very darkest parts of my drawing. I find that when I do this, it really breaks up the white of the paper, and I'm then able to understand a lot better where the in-between values are going to go. And remember, values are how light or how dark something is. If all I have in front of me is a white page with a bit of 2H pencil, I find it really hard to understand where to put each of my values. So I will just go in with my 8B pencil. That way I've got my darkest areas already on the page. I'm just going to speed this up a little bit for you. If you're following along at home, make sure that you have studied the reference photo, which is in this case the final piece. Again, with each one of these pencils that you're going to use, always make sure that you have a light hand with the pencils. You're only applying graphite in a very gentle manner. Never scrub those pencils onto the page, and never apply pressure. You're not trying to burnish the page, you're just trying to apply your graphite. So just gentle strokes. Make sure those strokes are going in one direction only. You're not making a scrubbing motion back and forth. Once I've got my 8B pencil on, it's time to then fill in the values in between. So I've got my whitest white on the page, which is the paper itself, and then I've got my darkest areas which is from my 8B pencil. And once I've finished with the 8B pencil, I then go to my HB pencil. This is just a mechanical pencil that I have bought from Daiso, which is a Japanese dollar store that we have here in Australia. And I'm never scrubbing back and forth, and I'm never having these untidy, broken lines in my drawing. If you have broken, untidy lines, it really makes the drawing look unprofessional, and it really takes away from the final look of your piece. So it may not look like it at the moment, but I'm not going back and forth. I'm going one direction and then gently lifting the tip of my mechanical pencil off the page. And that's how I proceed with every stroke that I'm making. So the HB is helping me to get some of the values in my mid-range, and it helps me blend out that darkness from the 8B. Always when you're looking at flowers, you need these soft transitions. Rarely will you find an area that has a very harsh line between a light and a dark area. Obviously, a flower being something quite organic, you have to depict those soft blends in your work. Once you've got it to this point, you can now start using some blending tools. Now I've got a makeup brush here, which I obviously have never used for makeup, and some cotton buds. We call them cotton buds or cotton tips here in Australia. I know they're known as Q-tips over in the US. And I like to use those to just help spread some of that graphite around on my paper. Once again, I'm not scrubbing back and forth. Every time I make a stroke, I will actually lift the tip of that blending tool. No matter what I'm using, I will lift that off my page and then go back to make another stroke. As you can see, I've even kept one of these used cotton tips. This cotton tip having all this graphite on it from previous projects, I hold on to those because if you just press those down gently onto the page, they'll give you a little bit of graphite on your paper. If you try to get that amount of graphite on there using your mechanical pencil or any other pencil, you run the risk of seeing all these little strokes. So you wouldn't get that softness that you need, and particularly with flowers, you have to make sure that it looks like there is a softness there on those petals. This particular Q-tip I love to use. I think it's a makeup remover Q-tip, and the cotton on the tips of those are really, really hard. So if you can find some of those where you're living, then I would highly recommend these. On one side it's got a paddle shape, and on this side that I'm using, it's got quite a fine point. So you can really get into narrow areas. And just remember, you're using it as if it's a small paintbrush. Okay, just do your strokes. Always lift off the page, never scrub back and forth. I mean, think about it. When you're sweeping your floor, you're never going to scrub with that broom back and forth, because that really is not going to be an effective way to move the dust to one place. And think of the graphite as dust, and you're trying to get this dust into the right spots on your page. So see how I've used a dirty or a used Q-tip. It already has some graphite on it, and all I'm doing is using that cotton to apply it where there's some shadow on those petals. So as you can see, it's slowly starting to look like a magnolia flower. Just erase as necessary. Let's speed this part up now. So here we have a 3B pencil. I know there's some darkness there where all the petals are close to the center of the flower. Once again, I'm just making strokes, and I'm lifting the pencil off and just drawing where some of those veins might be. And I'm also adding more graphite to the flower using my small makeup brush. So once you get towards the end of the drawing part, then you are now ready for quite possibly my favourite part, step 6, bring back the highlights. I'm happy with the shapes, I'm happy with the dark areas, however, I don't think there's enough contrast. So at this point, I'm going to pull out one of my favourite art supplies, and that is my kneadable eraser. I love this eraser because you can actually make it any shape that you need for the piece that you're doing. This one here is by Faber-Castell, and what you need to do for your piece, make it any shape that you want. Make sure that you're not playing with it too much in your hands, because once it gets a little bit warm, it won't hold its shape as well. So very, very light pressure, as you can see, and just pulling out the highlights. Graphite can be difficult to control, and there are times where, due to your blending, no matter what you do, unfortunately you're going to get some graphite in areas where you don't want it. So if that does happen, and I think that's inevitable, pull out your kneadable eraser, and then just as you can see, it's almost like you're drawing using your eraser. So wherever the light was hitting that petal or hitting that part of the flower, that's where you go to remove the graphite that's there. So keep going with that eraser, just pulling out any highlights that you need to, remembering that you want to have as much contrast as you can. So make your dark areas as dark as possible and your light areas as light as possible, because when you do that, the contrast is what's going to give your piece its power. If you are a beginner, make sure that you've swatched out all of your pencils before you start. As you can see, I've done so here on the right hand side of my Magnolia flower. And this brings me to my final step. This is how you would check that your piece is now finished. Just to demonstrate to you that when you finish your piece, if you're at home and you haven't got an art teacher next to you, remember what I'm saying to you. Make sure that each one of your pencils has contributed to a different area of your Magnolia flower. And that's your finished product. I've had so much fun creating this tutorial for you. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you did enjoy the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.